Welcome to Down in Bloomington, a conversational podcast about the musical history of Bloomington, Indiana. My guests this week are Matt Whitaker and Bill Zink of the Belgian Waffles. The Belgian Waffles formed in 1986 in Bloomington. Their music can be described as many things: improvisational, noise, deconstructionist, veering into psychedelic, with references to John Cale, Flipper, Sunhouse, and many more. Bill and Matt discussed the origins of the Belgian Waffles, their experiences in the Bloomington music scene, and memorable moments in places like the No Bar in Muncie, Second Story in Bloomington, their move to Louisville, and current projects that often include many of the other members of the Belgian Waffles. It was a real pleasure to talk to Bill and Matt, and I'm looking forward to sharing that conversation with you today. I only experienced the Belgian Waffles once in the early 90s, but Kevin Loyal has been instrumental in connecting me with folks who were a part of that 90s era scene, and I was lucky to be connected to Bill and Matt. The website Musical Family Tree has been a really good resource for tracking down the music of a lot of these bands that we're talking about and talking to on the podcast. So before we get into the conversation, I want to share some of the Belgian Waffles music with you. Are you both in Louisville?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great town to live in.
Yeah, we still play together.
Yeah, well, I was kind of researching that. Do you play as the Belgian Waffles?
We don't really have a name at this point. We just kind of started working together. I mean, we've worked on and off together ever since the start of the band, but just recently, it's been a while since I've done anything, and I was kind of at a loss on my other projects. So, and I hadn't had a chance to play with Matt for a while, so we just, I said, hey, let's get an improv trio together with Bart Galloway, who's a drummer down here.
That's awesome.
And we actually will have some stuff posted pretty soon on Bandcamp, and but unfortunately we're temporarily on hiatus because our drummer went and had a heart attack on us.
Just to set kind of the tone to place you in Bloomington's musical history, would you guys like to give me kind of a rundown of your origin story?
You're the original, Matt, so I'll let you take off.
Well, yeah, the notion all kind of started with a guy who's not here, Tony Woolard, our singer, guitar player, and cornet player of all those many years. And, you know, he'd kind of wanted to do something for a while, and I had been messing around with some dorm friends and a guy that I knew from my hometown, and it was really unsatisfying, and I wasn't a very good player. Like, I just picked up an instrument, and we were listening to stuff that was more like sound sculpture, and he said, well, let's do that. That's what we should learn to do stuff ourselves. So we started that, and then he'd been kind of hitting up other people around with the same idea, and Bill was kind of the other taker
Yeah.
on that idea, and we all had pretty similar influences. They got to be more so collective influences at later, but yeah, and that was Tony and I lived in the same dorm together. We lived in Briscoe Quadrangle.
What year was that?
That was fall of '85, and we got the idea rolling in the spring of 1986.
We actually made our there's a couple, I think one or two no bar shows, Matt, before the night.
Yeah, there was a couple, I think.
And yeah, and the first Bloomington show was at an night, an ER night, and it was actually on the same bill that Arson Garden debuted on.
Oh, I forgot that.
That's a really cool piece of history. You know, Kevin Loyal from the Walking Ruins has been somewhat instrumental in linking me to various people. He really strongly suggested that I get a hold of you guys, and I kind of want to talk about Night and kind of the I guess the impact that had on local bands being able to play, and kind of how you ended up being connected with that.
That's all quack stuff, so that's you, Bill.
Okay. Well, it's what the whole Night thing was more of a Denise Houston was running them most of the time when we were there, and Bill Weaver was also extensively involved. And it was kind of a performance art, noise, music, poetry, variety show. And it was a cool sort of like no holds barred sort of weirdo outsider thing. And it was also a good way for the booking agents to shove off people who were bugging them for shows onto bills that weren't going to get in the way of them making money.
Right.
And
i.e. us.
I.e. us. Yeah, we never made anybody a god.
We were pretty roundly reviled for
Wow.
in some circles, at least soundmen circles.
But yeah, so the nights were like the particular night I mentioned. I don't know that it was Arson Garden's Bloomington debut, but it's the first time they played outside of Collins, as far as I know. Don't hold me to that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So Arson Garden debuted. Sally's Dream was doing a set in drag, and I forget what they named themselves, but they were like smoking cloves and wearing berets and had painted on mustaches and were in male drag. And, you know, those kind of hijinks. And our set that night had Bob Wagner and Danielle Urschel come on stage and start reading poetry. And they were taking turns, and then they would start yelling over the top of each other and trying to kind of go over. And then Matt and Tony and I just kind of slunk out behind them and plugged into this randomly stacked amplifiers on the stage and just turned them all the way up and started feeding back. And that was the set. So,
so kind of as a listener, would it be fair to say that you utilized a lot of structure, but with improv over the top of it?
Eventually, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at the time, at the very beginning, like I said, we kind of had a varied set of influences, but like I think stuff that we all kind of pushed to the front when the band was first getting started would be like Flipper. We did a Flipper cover. We did a Tuxedo Moon cover. We were listening to a lot of Butthole Surfers and a lot of Einstürzende Neubauten, noisy stuff. So if there was no structure, we leaned really heavy into the noise. And if there was structure, it tended to be pretty sloppy punk rock. Or like Tuxedo Moon, minimalist. You know, we did a lot of minimalist. So.
We did a 6-hour-long cover of a Tuxedo Moon song.
That's right.
Is that
live
recorded?
on? Yes. I don't know if I look hard enough. I may still have the tapes. God knows if they play because they were the cheapest available tapes. But it was, I don't remember the year exactly. 87 is what sticks in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It was when WQAX was on top of a garage somewhere. God, I couldn't even find it if you asked me to. And it was in the middle of the ice storm. We weren't 100% sure that power would be on at the studio because most of the houses we lived in didn't have power. So, it's like we went down there and it's like, oh, cool. I don't have heat at the house, so I guess I'll do the show. So we basically said, hey, and we started, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Said, hey, let's just do like a 6-hour long cover of Seeding the Clouds.
Well, yeah, Tony was like, wouldn't that be the greatest thing? Because we would usually play that song until we got unplugged.
Yeah.
That or Shutdown.
Which means, Shutdown.
Which was built for that.
Germs cover.
But yeah, I mean, you had that, and we had shifts. Like people would kind of come in, and somebody'd have to go to work, and then somebody would. So the band for that performance was all of our friends.
Yeah.
And us.
And I think I was on the freaking console for the entire time. And every so often, I would plug my guitar into the microphone input of a cassette deck, which was running into the board, and then just play guitar that way. And yeah, so we're talking, high fidelity shit here, I'm telling you.
And as I remember it, I was there for like the first chunk when it kind of started out with us actually kind of most of us there playing the song, and then it broke down into the shifts of people and things, and then we all kind of managed to get back there at the end of it.
Yeah, I think we're like, I think there were points where I was on the console and there was like nothing going on, so I would just had my guitar plugged into the tape deck, so I run that input all the way up and then run the master down, and then just kind of like touch the guitar pickup in different points, and there would be 20 minutes of just these weird little sounds. And at, I don't know, like, I think we showed up at 10. We actually, and this was all live over, well, it's not
Broadcast,
because WQAX was cable, but it was all live. And at a certain point, I think we set up at 10 and sort of started playing Seeding the Clouds, and 2 hours to coalesce it. And I actually think it may have been longer than 6 hours. I think 6 hours is all we recorded.
Tony was shooting for 24.
Yeah, well, he didn't make it. Well, I don't think so. But the goal, I think we went from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. the next day, and I think we recorded it from, I don't know, but it's all a fog. But yeah, it was and then it's just like, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's like, well, shit, everybody's here. Let's go ahead and try to wrap it up. Actually play the song again. But yeah.
I'm trying to remember who some of the shift people were. I knew we had some of the NIDS were in there.
Bob Wagner. I think he was full-time in the band by then, though.
And Bob, yeah.
Is it fair to say that you also approached some of your music, or all of your music, with a certain amount of humor or levity, or when I'm listening to some of this, I don't know if you know that you have a lot of stuff on Musical Family Tree.
Yeah.
So when familiarizing myself with those recordings, I felt like there was a certain amount of humor, or maybe camaraderie, a certain amount of, maybe not even inside jokes, but
yes, definitely inside jokes. It's 90% inside jokes.
Yeah, plenty of those.
But it translated well into the listening experience to be able to feel like you were getting a view into a group of friends that were doing something that they really liked.
We had a lot of fun, yeah, for sure. And in terms of humor, like Bob Wagner and all of us at the time were like, Church of the Subgenius and Principia Discordia and those sorts of the abstract humor stuff was always there. And Tony as a lyricist is pretty amazing in several different ways.
He's a brilliant lyricist. That's
he really is kind of underappreciated for a long time, even by us. But I think he's also a goof ass, and he's like, so he brings a lot of humor.
So were you playing at house shows, or were you playing at Second Story? What kind of venues were you playing at in Bloomington?
In Bloomington, that's a qualifier.
Yeah.
We occasionally played at Second Story. We occasionally played house shows. We actually, even though we all lived in Bloomington, we played at the No Bar in Muncie more than we played anywhere else.
Early on,
we could pretty much, we that was second, and there's just a lot more pressure in a college town, and I'm taking a longer view. I'm definitely taking a longer view of this now than I did at the time. Trust me. But there's a lot more pressure to make money. I mean, we talk about our friend David Miller, who booked Second Story, and we used to give him 9 different kinds of grief about trying to book us. And I know he was getting a ton of shit from the owners about what he was booking there and why would he book this. And I mean, and it's not just Bloomington either. I mean, we got banned from a few places in Louisville too, when we went down here at the end of
a lot of our
96
stuff,
or so doesn't translate to a crowd.
Exactly, and a lot of it was harsh and difficult listening, and what we'd run into is people thought we were just trying to be a-holes, and it's like, we like this stuff.
Yeah.
We're doing this because it's what we listen to and we like it. And then we'd all stop at the same time and they'd be like, shocked. And it's like, yeah, that was a song. But we did parties. We played a lot of parties, like we played a yard sale, the WQAX yard sale.
Oh,
that's good. That was good. And
names will be changed to protect the innocent.
A lot of times parties would be more eclectic, and at that point there were several houses that had parties every weekend, multiple bands in the basement, and we'd play there, and we'd play with Walking Ruins. It would be like, a noise band is okay with a punk band or with a metal band or something. It was a little more free form, and our sets were short anyway.
So did you consider yourself a part of the Bloomington music scene, or did you consider yourself as more of an Indiana band or a traveling band playing outside of Bloomington?
I'm both,
Bloomington,
we were definitely a Bloomington band, and we had our fans, and we had, like, the Nids were friends of ours, and the Walking Ruins were friends of ours. The music scene itself was very accepting, and we were all, a lot of camaraderie, but it was in terms of playing out was where we would run into difficulty. I mean, we were friends with all the band folks you're talking to, and a lot of them liked what we were doing, some in smaller doses, so we certainly were a Bloomington band that got a more public break early on at the No Bar in Muncie.
I will also add on just psychically, I mean, to kind of touch back on what you talked about sort of humor, the camaraderie in the music. A lot of what we had was just joy being in a group together, doing stuff that we like to do. And there was a level of that kind of just sheer fuckery that the No Bar in Muncie really encouraged. I mean, there was a very small but very, very intense scene in Muncie, and it centered around John Rance, Jeff Weiss, and Tim Noe. Tim Noe, Bloomington connection. He was a Dancing Cigarette, and they had a called Latent Chaos, which was absolutely one of our favorite bands at the time. I mean, there's like I think we all have roughly the same Indiana triumvirate, the MX-80 Sound, Dancing Cigarettes, Dow Jones and the Industrials. There's going to be a few more, but Latent Chaos was definitely up there with them. And it was a really cool place because you could get up there and do anything. There was one show where we played, and my 14-year-old brother's punk band was punk band was on the same bill. And there was a time once, I specifically remember we were in the No Bar just watching this metal band, and they weren't very good, but it didn't matter in the No Bar because you're up there, you're doing your thing. And somebody started talking shit, and John Rand just turned around and saying, you know what, if you think you're better, you can play the next set. You can borrow the equipment if you want. Get up there. The guy's like, no, I'm okay. And it's like, all right, then shut the fuck up.
I think, like Bill mentioned too, that I think the No Bar, not to go off on too much of that tangent, but they didn't quite have the same financial issues that bars in Bloomington.
That's important.
Yeah, John had a record store, and his wife had a used clothing store, vintage clothing, and they made money, and the No Bar was their project. And there were, Rhinos kind of ended up being a little bit that way, more of an all ages club. It continued success and all, but when Latent Chaos played Second Story, we played with them.
That's right. And the coolest, and this is only going to mean something to other people in a handful of people outside the band, but my absolute favorite Starboy moment is when I got to play guitar with Latent Chaos for one song.
The lineup of the Belgian Waffles shifted a little bit as you moved to Louisville. Is that correct?
It shifted quite a bit
right before.
Yeah. And like early on, there was kind of a stewing pot of several people who would come in. Like Sean from the Nids was involved really early on, but it kind of boiled down to Bill and Tony and I and Bob Wagner and Chet Molesky and Vid Warren. That was kind of the first nucleus version of the band, I guess. Wouldn't you say, Bill?
Yeah, I would say so.
Because that was what got recorded on the early cassettes and stuff, pretty much. And then, it changed. Bob left town, and Jim Mannion played with us for a while, played drums with us for a while. Sarah Lund was our second drummer.
Actually, Sarah played before Jim, I think.
Yeah, she was the second after Bob left.
At a certain point, when Sarah was in, I forget what the order that Keith and Jim were playing, and then Sarah. I don't know who was before who, but there was a point when Sarah Lund was playing when Dan and Heather joined the band, and Dan and Heather and Chris, Dan Willems, Chris Willems, and Heather Floyd were doing sort of the other weird, doing weird shit in town, the other kind of outsider stuff, and they eventually ended up joining, and there was a short overlap where we had both Heather and Sarah playing drums. That was I think that might have only been a few months, but then that's towards the beginning, middle of the 90s when Dan, Heather, Chris came and went, but Dan and Heather became really solid members, and then at a certain point Heather became the drummer. And that's kind of where the Louisville lineup of the band, it's sort of, it like right before, and we left Bloomington and shifts. Dan and Heather hit the road like in 95. Matt, when did you move?
Yeah, I was right in there in 95 to Louisville. And prior to that, like you said, like the early mid 90s was when, we started trying to play out of town more. Like we played in Chicago, had a fair amount of connections, and it wasn't too far, and we had friends up there to stay with, whatever. So we were trying to get out and trying to play more regionally, and that was not very successful except for Chicago. But But yeah, then the move to Bloomington, like we were all just kind of itching and wanting to have a little more of a city underneath us, and we couldn't afford Chicago. So,
So,
yeah.
and
So we moved to Louisville.
So the Louisville move sounds like it was a little bit serendipitous, or it happened in maybe shifts a little bit. There were folks that
it was kind of stratified, but it was sequential. It was kind of like dominoes, you know.
Yeah.
Like we all plan on ending up there. Just the time frames took a little bit.
Was there a difference in the kind of places you were playing, or the venues that you had access to in Louisville?
Absolutely, yeah, because it was a bigger city, so and there were a little more art damaged, noisier, more experimental things. That scene was bigger here just because it was bigger. You know, it was a bigger scene, so it had more of that already going on, and at the time, it was super affordable to live here.
At the time,
Yeah.
How much of your recorded material was recorded live, and how much of it was done in the studio?
99% live.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we played live in the studio most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we might, track vocals or something, but
were they live shows that were recorded, or did you intentionally go to the studio, play live, and then track the vocals?
Both. I mean, most of the stuff, I think, like the stuff on Indiana Family Tree. I mean, it says, if it was a show, where it was and what the day was. After we moved here, Dan was pretty much in charge of recording everything. He had the best recording gear and the most experience. I mean, I record stuff too, but there are levels of that. Like, we all kind of by that point knew what we were doing. But yeah, in terms of the recorded stuff that's out there, we tried to make that pretty seamless, really. Like, you could probably listen to stuff we recorded in our own studio and a show, and you might not be able to tell the difference, because it was a lot of the same stuff we recorded with. I mean, you could, a trained ear could, but it ideally that experience wouldn't be different.
Was any of it impacted by the crowd, or how the crowd would interact with the music?
Yeah, in interesting ways.
Just a little, yeah.
I think one of the CDs we put out is called Relax and Caritas, and the very first song on there, which I forget the name of it. But it was on Relaxing at Caritas, the one where we were opening for Oot Greet.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We just kind of Oot Greet's a really good band, but they were at that certain phase. They were and they're friends of ours, and we love them dearly. And they were doing a very kind of precise artistic set. And so we kind of reverted back to our roots and just turned everything all the way up and just blasted for 20 straight minutes and recorded it. And so I think that was influenced by not so much the crowd as much as just the situation. I think we were all, I think when you do stuff that's as heavily improvised as we do, I think it's always impacted by the environment. And a lot of times composers try to compose things to kind of be isolated, kind of a Apollonian ideal of something that they're shooting for. And I think we're kind of the kind of band that always kind of played to the room in one way or another, even if we weren't necessarily intending to.
Yeah. Do either of you have significant hearing loss?
Yes. Yes.
I'm surprised I don't have more. But yeah, I mean, there's a little. I can hear the ocean sometimes.
I hear the ocean all the time. I'm really well. It's interesting because we talked about the stuff that we recorded. That Matt and Bart and I recorded. Last winter, and I'm putting it. We're in the process of putting it together, and I'm going to put it on a Bandcamp thing. And I'm about ready to. Actually, I've got to do that probably tonight after I get off, or tomorrow. I got to shoot Kevin Loyal an email because I want him to remaster it for us. Because I at one point in my life would have been able to do that as well as anybody, but I can't trust my ears anymore. I can't do mixes anymore. I can't, I just, yeah. So, I'm definitely, very close to hearing aid territory.
Some of your stuff was released on independent labels. Is that correct?
Yeah, we kind of created our own labels. I think,
okay.
We never had like an indie of any size release any of our stuff. We are like the worst networkers in the entire freaking world.
And what you'll probably see on the stuff is Adept Recordings, and that's Dan.
That's Dan.
Dan Willems, our sax player. I mean, that's his engineering, tagline. But
our first tapes were on New Disco GNU. That was a Tony Woolard joke.
Yeah.
He used to see how many things he could reference with one joke, and it didn't matter how weak or bad the references were. So New Disco covered a lot of ground.
What was the little cassette label from Bloomington? We actually did get some stuff put out.
Oh God! I forget. They that was wish I remembered.
All I can think of is Ugg Explode. That's a Weasel Walter. What?
Yeah, I think it's Ugg something. I don't know. Ugg Core maybe. I don't know. But there was a tape label in Bloomington that prided themselves in putting out bad music, and they went ahead and put ours out. And we were, you kind of got that whiff of disrespect around it, but it's like, fuck, who cares? So we put out two things. One of them was Arbeit macht Fish Fry. It's improvised. It was like a quote improvised rock opera. Like, who was it that got fired that day? Was that you or Tony or both or what? Somebody got fired and the day of practice, and so we did a rock opera.
Yeah, I don't remember. Were there probably if he got fired, it's probably Tony.
Were there often personal events in your lives that ended up turning into material for songs?
Oh yeah,
I kind of picked up on that in the titles and themes of some of the songs.
Yeah, there's a lot of social commentary and that sort of thing, and a lot of it, like, we were not well loved for, because we'd turn the flamethrower on whoever, if you were doing something shady, man, who knows? But and there was a lot of that at the time. It wasn't just us, but and we were a band of generals too, so there was a lot of inner turmoil. We were all pretty driven in the same direction, so it wasn't like people would quit and come back or anything like that. But I've had more than one guitar thrown at me.
No fist fights, but guitar throwings and I didn't throw my. Well, no, I take it back. I didn't throw it at anybody.
Was that tension ever helpful in the creative process?
Yeah, it was just froth going over the top. It wasn't. It didn't help the process any.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, we were a band for 20 years, and when we finally did kind of call it quits, I think it was the oddest thing, because I will tell people that of all the bands that tell you that they quit because of artistic differences, I think this is the only time I believe it, because I think we finally just stopped playing together when we all wanted to go, had a specific thing we wanted to do, that the band was not going to do. So we decided, okay, we got to find a different way to do this. And the thing that's really interesting is, I swear to God, I think we played together at least as much after we broke up as when we were a band, because everybody would have a project, and it's like, hey, we need a few things, like I was trying to start something. So this is when Matt lived in Lexington. So I was talking to Matt. It's like, hey, I'm going to drive Tony down to Lexington. If you don't mind whipping out your 4-track, let's just do a bunch of shit and record it. And I was playing, and I was playing with Dan and Heather, and Matt, you were doing Project Red Book too at the time, and
Yeah, and that's the thing. All along, there were lots of other side projects that involved some of us or didn't. But yeah, even after the Waffles quit, it was kind of like we all still had interactive projects together,
yeah,
like now.
like now, yeah.
Was 2014 the last time that there was an official Belgian Waffles show or event or release?
Yeah, and that was, we got back together because Bill knows the guy from Cropped Out. What's his name?
Ryan Davis.
Yeah.
Ryan had been working on us for a while, and I joke around that we had flying Friday night because the Sun Ra Orchestra cost so much on Saturday night, and he knew he could get us for nothing or next to it. He paid. I think he paid for Tony's airline ticket.
Yes. Yeah, that was our deal, because we were all still here except for Tony, who lived in Arizona, and we said, if we can get Tony back here and get him back to Arizona, sure, we'll do it. And we asked Tony, and he's like, okay. And it's my best Tony impression. And
that's a good one.
and yeah, and it was great. Cropped Out has always been a fantastic little festival here. I hope it maybe comes back again.
So was that where you did that show or that event after like an 8-year gap, an 8-year absence? Was it hard to kind of coalesce again, and did you have to do some rehearsals prior to, or?
We did, and one of the things about doing it was we all decided all brand new. It wasn't going to be plays the hits or whatever. It was all going to be totally brand new. And what we would do, thanks to the internet by that point, we would get together Dan and Heather's, which was our studio, and we'd practice and work stuff up and record it, and we'd send the recordings to Tony in Arizona, and he'd listen to it, write lyric ideas, and then he came a week early, so we had a week with us all on the ground here before that show.
If Tony hadn't been able to come back from Arizona, would it have been the Belgian Waffles, or would it have been a different project?
We wouldn't have done it.
It would have been something else. Yeah. Or it wouldn't have been the Waffles at all.
Yeah.
I think 2 years before that, the band I was in, Black Casper, did in 2012. We played there, and the lineup for Black Casper was Dan, Heather, Chris, Bart, and I. So a good chunk of the Belgian Waffles were on that particular show.
That kind of brings us up to now. You've mentioned that there have been multiple projects that have included multiple members of the Belgian Waffles, and you mentioned that the two of you are currently involved in a project. You want to talk a little bit about kind of some of that stuff and what's going on now?
Yeah, well, Bill's talked about it up front there, and he put together completed his pedal board, and I had just put a new preamp in an active.
I just got a new one.
Yeah, and we were like, well, let's call Bart and let's run these new toys and see what it sounds like, just to get used to them, and we did. Bart's always ready to play, and he had just gotten a new studio that was pretty recording friendly to my field recording stuff, and you get together, you hit record, right? And we did, and when we listened back to it, we were like, hey, this is pretty good. like we really liked it more than we expected to, because we were just kind of stretching our stuff out to see how it worked. And then notoriously, free improv is a lot more fun to do than it often is to listen to. And but the fact, I mean, I don't know if it's, what the timing was right. So we said, hey, this was pretty good. Let's get together like once a month or so and do this until it quits being good. And so we did it about 4 times, like with the good microphones, and we're pretty happy with it, with what we had. And then Bart had his health issues, but he's doing good now. He's not been playing the drums yet, but
yeah, it's going to be a little bit of time before he gets to play the drums, but I'm sure he'll be back as soon as he can. Yeah. Can't keep him away for too long.
And it's currently an unnamed project.
Yeah, we haven't decided on it. We've thrown some ideas around, but nothing's stuck yet.
So you've got this project. Are there other projects or other endeavors that you're involved in Louisville or outside Louisville that we can tell people about?
I've got another band, the band I've kind of been running off and on since 2007, Black Casper, which again will probably involve Matt. I haven't told
on and off
yet exactly what's going on because I don't know yet, but I kind of decided to schedule a show for August, so I get off my ass and put something together. People are getting tired of me calling them up and telling them, hey, I want you to help me out with something, and never following through. So I scheduled a show August 24th isn't what sticks in my mind, but yeah, it's a very noisy, very, very, very Black Casper is actually probably more responsible for my hearing loss than the Belgian Waffles, if I'm being honest. I just kept escalating, and now I've just got stacks of ridiculously loud amps. And I only started wearing earplugs a couple years ago. So, but yeah, that's going to get rolling sometime soon. And
where will that show be?
It's called Planet of the Tapes in Louisville. It's they do a lot of comedy.
Teeny little place.
But, and ironically, I do have one other thing that is, I joke around as my retirement plan. I've got an acoustic alter ego called Hoosier Pete. And you can find a shit ton of that on Musical Family Tree as well.
I've actually seen that and didn't know that was you.
Yeah, that is, it's kind of, I describe it as when I finally gave myself permission to shamelessly rip off John Fahey. So that's kind of what Hoosier Pete is. And it's even to the point where I'm listening to some of the electronic collages I did, and I'm like, oh my God, that's even more of a Fahey ripoff than the regular stuff I play.
Matt, what about you?
There's been stuff kind of come and go. I currently have a rock trio that was a quartet until recently. But we have a show coming up at a place called Air Devil's Inn. The band's called Hissing Booth. It was sort of put together as a kind of Mission of Burma meets birthday party sort of rock project that was kind of leaning into like the Australian blues kind of punk factor. But, the dynamics kind of change now that it's down to a trio. But I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll probably be heavier. It'll probably be a little more metal influenced.
Well, I'm actually in the middle of another long promised and late delivered project. I'm doing, I don't know if you're familiar with the Veritables, a release that Kevin just remastered. I'm in the middle of doing a big review of that, and it just opened a lot of floodgates as far as memories. I will say, in a lot of ways, we meshed a lot better in places other than Bloomington, but there's definitely, I mean, a big part of Bloomington was a big part in what we do, because I mean, there's so much history, and the people that were there too. I mean, all kinds of people, and we got as much good feedback from people who hated us as people. And let's face it, for a long time, we were a really crappy band most of the time. So I mean, early on. It was
Just add
hit and miss
bourbon.
at best. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
and yeah, like you said, the music scene during that chunk of time, I mean, and it's been said a lot, but it was really amazing. It was a special time and place, and I don't know, I mean, obviously we wouldn't have met, and we wouldn't have done any of it had it not been for Bloomington, and had it not been for the you know, the scene that was there, that was an incubator for us to break out of our headspace. You know, it's like that's where I found weird music. You know, I grew up in a little teeny town in central Indiana between, you know, Bloomington and Terre Haute. You know, the closest record store was, you know, 40 minutes away in Terre Haute. It wasn't a good one. You know, so I mean, that's Bloomington is responsible for the band, and we very much are that.
Thank you both very much for taking time to do this. And
Cool. See you, Bill.
thanks again.
take care.
See you soon, Matt.
Thanks a lot.
And that was my conversation with Bill and Matt from the Belgian Waffles. It was really great to talk to both of them. And I want to again thank Kevin Loyal for connecting me with them. And I want to thank Musical Family Tree for hosting so much great Indiana music. Thanks for listening to Down in Bloomington. I hope you're telling your friends about it, and I hope that you continue to check in regularly to see if there's new episodes. I'm going to leave you with one more track from the Belgian Waffles. This is another song I found on Musical Family Tree, and it's called Whitaker. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you soon.
Guys, I'm happy with that. That's fine. Yeah. What? When in doubt, scream, shoot, name. Well, I got lost kind of because I wasn't really ready for it to be as fast as it was. No, I know that, but it's quick, tongue-wise, so... I got a lead tongue. I could kill us both with 1 foot. The Chinese envoy was here. The Chinese envoy was here. Amazing liquid fire may erupt violently from drain. I think it's time I told you about Nelson Algren. Rose Watson! Rose Watson! Rose Watson! Yeah! No! I can't play! No! Yeah! I don't play it, man! I'll be on my way! Doesn't it hope I'm not clever, cause deep inside I got a rock and roll liver. Johnny,